Hey, I said, yeah, buddy. Rolling like a big shot. Chevy tuned up like a NASCAR pit stop. Fresh paint job. Fresh insides. Is the outside frame in the trunk wide? Are the rims big? Do it ride good? Lean back. Right hand on the pine wood. You only have to say 2 words to call us. Yeah, buddy. And that whole thing will come out of a millennial's mouth. And then also that, and also like the duh, 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 duh. And we all, juvenile calls us to the dance floor. Hey, everybody. Let's get Denise in here. It's Mattison. Denise probably knows that song. I don't know if she'd know every word of Ice Cream Paint Job. I feel like you do know that song.
Do you know it, Mattison?
I do.
I do
I gave the
not think I
call.
know
Yeah,
it.
you do.
I've given the call many a times.
I don't.
The
I don't.
sigil.
I don't think I know it.
Yep.
I think if you heard it, you probably would have been like, yeah, I've heard that before, but either
But not with
way.
the soul that you put into that little
I
poetry we just got there in the beginning.
I'm glad everybody felt that. That's what I was going for. You know, it is poetry with a little bit of humor added in is what I think rap music is. So, well,
I
hello
felt it.
everyone. What's on the, how do we say it, Denise? I'm going to get it right one of these. What's on the top? What's
Yeah.
on the top for
What's
everybody?
on the top? What's on the top for you, Madison?
Well, I feel like I'm super excited to have this conversation because it's a conversation I've wanted to have collectively for quite a while, and it's something that I've kind of plugged away at this with Jerri, and I know that I've talked about it a little bit with you, Denise, but uh, being able to have this conversation with you, Denise, and kind of having, I think, the experiences that you and I bring is going to be really interesting. And the reason that I didn't want to have this conversation sooner is because I didn't want it to be hopeless, and my thoughts were kind of like not, they hadn't really coalesced into something that actually made sense and wasn't just noticing something that kind of needed to be addressed. And so I feel a little bit more like I have a better understanding of the path forward, at least for me personally. And I didn't want to have this conversation until I was there. So
And I feel
that's
like
just
that
kind of where
it's
I'm
so
at. I
mysterious.
know.
What is the conversation?
Well, so
If you had to title the conversation, what would you call it?
the the mass incarceration of the modern pet dog.
I would love to talk about this.
I know.
That's a big one.
Wow. I mean,
That's a big
you
one.
just cannonballed off the high dive, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I bet we'll get lots of nuance on this one, won't we?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
how this conversation is how Denise and I met, everyone. Was Denise made a video basically saying, like, most people's dogs like live in the yard, and or if they're lucky they have a
Yeah.
yard. And they maybe kind of sometimes go on a walk, get a little yard time,
And
get a
if
little.
they go for a walk, let them be a dog, because that might be all they've got all week. So give it
No,
to
they're
them.
supposed to heal
All
exactly by your side.
right, but look how far we've all come.
Right. Yeah, and so I think for a long time many of us have felt that. I don't know that somebody that hasn't been either worked in correctional systems or been incarcerated or been closely around that would maybe put those two things together. I don't know that they would know to make that.
Yeah, I think it takes a loss of or witnessing a loss of something to really be able to, identify it out in the world. And I also really want to say that as this has kind of unfolded for me over months and years, I don't see this as a criticism. I see this as an observation of just where we're at, right? So like nobody's here to say that that we're wrong or that it's wrong, because I think to say that it's wrong is not super valuable because it doesn't really help us. And some of the solutions that would come out of saying, okay, well, where we are now are kind of silly. Like they don't make sense or they're not really solutions, right? Like just throw the dog in the backyard all day. But that doesn't actually help or move. That's not always possible, right? To, again, be able to give the dog more time outside. Dedicating your entire life to your dog is not a appropriate and viable solution for 100% of the population, right? Like we we dedicated our lives to this, but that can't be the answer for everybody. Freeing them all into the streets also can't be the answer, right? So like I'm just, to me, there isn't an answer. There isn't, because it isn't a problem, it's just a circumstance. It is the circumstance in which we find ourselves.
I mean, awareness is a big thing.
Yes.
Because if you think about things and you become aware that our dogs are basically prisoners, which is, in my opinion, correct, there are things we can do to make that a comfortable prison or an uncomfortable prison. There's choices we can make. There are decisions, and Jerri and I've talked a lot about risk analysis. There are decisions you might make, because the reality is if your dog is in an ultra prison and never gets out, they're safer than dogs that have some life outside the home. But I think most of us would say, well, yeah, but what about quality of life? But that's an interesting point right there, because, you feed the wrong food. Oh my God, you're going to kill the dog. You took it for a walk where other dogs are. Oh, it's going to get killed. You went to the dog park. I mean, people's ability to identify risk without balancing out benefit is amazing, right? So our dogs are safer in the home. And when I was a kid, dogs often ran loose. Absolutely. And I would certainly say that they probably had a better quality of life until they died. They got hit by cars a lot. They would randomly maybe chase a kid and nip it, and that was the end of that, because there was no nipping kids when I was a kid. That was it.
Same.
But the ones that just kind of lived that way and didn't get hit by a car, didn't nip kids. I mean, look at street dogs. I've watched them, street dogs in Mexico, and they're pretty content in their flea-bitten way. I mean, it's trade-offs, right?
Yeah. And I do want to say that like I'm speaking to my experience here in America, which is definitely not the experience everywhere in the world. This is just what I've observed, especially in the last 4.5 years, where I've been my eyes have been paying more attention to that. And yeah, I totally agree with you, Denise, that like, and I said this to you the other day, Jerri, that you can't create a new something from the same circumstance and the same level of consciousness. And so leaving the circumstance as it is, we change how we think about it. That actually does change things. That actually changes the way that we move through the world with our dogs. And I think that that's significant. It's not to say that, again, that we don't sometimes fall into the trap, because the potential dynamic of being a warden to your dog is the same way it is, I would assume, being a parent, and just needing to be aware of, you are the one that creates the rules and creates the structures and creates the boundaries. And so you have the potential to fall into that the same way that when you're out on a walk with your dog, if you're micromanaging, you're kind of falling into that prison guard mentality, right? Of like really micromanaging the yard time. And so I think having that awareness is the single most important and the single most important piece, and also the first step.
I'll be super curious if people watching this want to weigh in, because I would love to hear from people who maybe never thought about it or maybe offended by this conversation, and the why. Or is it like, yeah, I guess we are. Love is kind of what it is. I mean, I'd love to.
I agree. And I would
I
also
think
love to give a
providing
tiny bit,
context is
yeah,
important, though,
I want to give a
Mattison.
little bit more context, which is that I am a formerly incarcerated individual. I was an inmate for 5 years, and Denise was a prison guard. And she and I have been able to have I think, really good conversations that, again, are able to come from these two different perspectives that, I mean, I've been in many conversations with officers, and I think that there's a lot of value there in getting at both sides of this. So I'm just excited to dig in with you, but yeah, also see what people are thinking.
Somebody said, when I have a group of dogs on a hike, I prefer to think of myself as the kindergarten teacher. Oh my God, me
Yes.
too.
Yes.
Helping set the boundaries versus their prison guard. You know, I said to one of my clients the other day that was very hard on herself about timing. I was just having this conversation with Mattison. She's like, okay, before you say anything about my video, I know that my timing is off. Oh my God. And she, you know, kind of went on about it. And I was like, what? That's I don't care about that. I mean, I'm looking for basic level understanding between you and your dog. Let me give you an example. When Enzo pulls up on my side all on his own after he's been out and he's just like, I'm going to check in. I need a snack. I'm not like, yes. I go every single time I go, to him. Because it's about the understanding of acknowledging that he did this really cool thing and making it exciting and making it happy. That is so much easier to remember. It's so much easier to want to kind of fall into than being so strict and specific about something like timing. But it just goes back to like something about the way we have I don't, the way that the industry has been shaped has led people to believe the most strange things and be so hard on themselves over really simple little things, like trying to be a really great kindergarten teacher
Mm.
instead of, and so what I explained to her was this. I said, if you want to go and see Denise and you want to work on some, you know, some sport dog stuff, or you want to do something where it's really important that you mark properly and that you go and do that when we're done. But if you're just the average person that's working on helping your dog with behavioral problems, it, it's so much more simple than you think. And it should not have a feeling of incarceration at all. It should be fun regardless of how you just, you know, the inner workings of the techniques that you choose or the way that you follow. But kindergarten teacher, that's what I
So
like to say. Or
I think
like
it should
beginning
be.
salsa instructor, you know, like come in, learn how to dance some salsa.
I don't think they did that in my kindergarten, but yes, I think it should be authentic, and I don't
Hmm.
think we talk about that with dogs. We talk about being unemotional, and I'm just like, I don't get that. I am super emotional with my dogs. If I'm upset with them, they know I'm upset, and
Hmm.
I don't understand why people think that's a problem. You
Let's
think
talk
they
about
don't
that for a
get at
second.
us? They get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, God damn it, don't you do that. You know, get off my bed. You're
Hmm.
not allowed on my bed. You know you're not allowed on my bed. And now my bed has dirty little Zen bits all over it. Off my bed.
Hmm.
He knows he's not allowed on my bed.
So
That's why when I walk in the door,
but
he
people
zips,
have a
zips
problem
off.
with that. Some people feel like saying that to a dog or even a person is problematic. I'm going to air quote that. When I don't think that it is either. I mean, I've been consciously trying to film little in betweens of my dealings with Enzo, where I'm like, don't take one more step, you know, like because that's a normal. I mean, we're dealing with these dogs that are just so powerful and some of them so intelligent. I'm talking about Denise. But it's just like, I can't imagine thinking that it would hurt my dog's feelings to get on him about something that we've practiced a million times. And he's just because he has free will and he's a dog, he's going to go over there and kind of try it that time. Wait, don't you get away from that. I already said no. And then he like runs off in this little sort of like but he knows he's got to stop, but I think that for whatever reason, we have terrified the public about fallout. We've terrified them about shutting dogs down. And some of those things were warranted that were said. But once again, we swung too far. We did it again.
Well, there's the screaming, howling, out of control yelling, which has nothing to do
Yeah.
with the dog's behavior. I mean,
Hmm.
people do that with
Losing control.
you've lost
Yeah. As a
control because
person.
your toddler smashed your favorite record, or I don't
Hmm.
know, but something, and so you lost your mind. But when I do it with my dogs, it's very unusual that I'm genuinely angry, but I will put on a little show, get off my bed. I'm not that upset about it. So he's on my bed. Look, if it bothered me that much, I would have shut the door and he would not have been on my bed. So that's
Hmm.
obviously, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
But not that, a few things, but not very many things make me that angry. But I think it's weird not to have honest conversations with people. And I think it's weird not to have an honest conversation with a dog. So if you do something that really upsets me, the difference between you and a dog is I'm going to use my words with you, but my words are going to be pretty damn clear. I'm going to be like,
Hmm.
I'm really upset with you. I'm going to tell you why I'm really upset with you. And I can use that tone of voice because you're a person. You made me really,
Hmm.
really angry. You made me very sad. You pissed me off. I felt very disrespected. I'm going to put those words out there, and then you're going to absorb them however you will. Those words with a dog, the words aren't going to work, but the tone works. So
Hmm.
combined with the fact that you're doing something I don't want to see, I just I think it's weird not to be honest with your dog. I just do. And if you're going through your whole life being pissed off, then you have another problem, right? I
You
mean,
have yeah.
there's something else going on, but if it's more of an occasional thing, because the thing is, I also have the wow. I said that all the time in my videos. Like, I mean it too. It's like, wow.
Hmm.
I don't say that unless I mean that. I don't. Like, if
Yeah.
it's something you've done 100 times perfectly, that's no wow. That's expected. But when
Yeah.
you show me something, I'm like, wow, I didn't know you knew how to do that. Wow. That has a lot of meaning. And I think it has more meaning because I also have the, if I ever see that again, you're going to be a homeless dog. So I think
Yeah.
when you have kind of both of those, yeah, I'm going to send you to the shelter. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. Next time I say you're going to be an incarcerated dog, you do that
Yeah.
shit again, you are going to the shelter.
That's
It's a
lockdown.
super max for you.
Lockdown for real.
I think that is just enough for them to notice a difference. Because if life is all wow, like I'll tell you, in my family, my mom raised me, and my dad, I think he just was like, if you want to have kids, they're your kids. I think that was the mentality, which wasn't terribly unusual at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to school and got like a good report card, I went to my dad first, and I always think this is an interesting psychological reality because he was hard to please. So it wasn't like he was screaming and, well, yes, he was screaming and yelling, but let's put that aside for now. That wasn't the reason. It was that didn't he was not impressed easily.
Hmm.
He didn't just like, oh, that's amazing. My mom was your typical chipper little, oh, look, you drew a little elephant or whatever kind of mom. My dad wasn't going to do that. So I worked a lot harder to please my dad because it was hard. My mom was like, yeah.
Hmm.
So with my
Well,
dogs, I'm like,
the
I'm
payoff
gonna be
feels
I'm
better.
gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. And
Hmm.
I think that's normal. And having, as she said, having worked in a jail, and I I I understand manipulation. Like, you do that for 8 years and you will understand what manipulation looks like. And some of these people were masters of
Hmm.
they do things like come over, have a nice chat. For those of you who don't know, this is very normal for people who are guards or whatever to have conversations. It's not like you sit in a tower with a gun. It's not like that. You're just there with the folks, and you're sort of managing kind of a flow. You make sure that
Hmm.
whatever your rules are, there's a flow. You manage that flow. But as a result, you actually start to know them, and they start to know you. So they're going to know things like, do you have children? They're going to, it just gets kind of, obviously they're not friends, but the point is there's relationships. And it's relatively common that you'll be having one of these perfectly normal conversations, and then they will ask for something. That's manipulation. It's
Hmm.
intentional. It's like everything is good. And my reaction is always like, why did you have to ruin that perfectly nice conversation? And you
Hmm.
can say that. But, you know, it's just kind of something you're like,
Yeah,
oh,
you learn it in the world of addiction and alcoholism as well. You learn it
Oh,
in
I
the
bet
world
you do.
of dealing. Yeah, there's never there's a person that's close to our family that's a young gentleman, and he came from essentially the foster care system and just is kind of a part of our family. And he he called me the other morning at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I saw him partaking of some street pharmaceuticals, and immediately broke into a fentanyl speech and was like, "What's going on?" Blah, blah, blah. And then just through further conversation, I realized like, "Oh, you've been doing this, like selling this stuff."
Mm.
And so much of so many different things makes sense at that point. But the point of that is to say he has a relationship with Layla, like a sibling relationship with Layla. And she said, "Why do you think he talks to us? Why do you think he does that?" And I said, "Because everyone else that he talks to, there's a motive. Everyone, when you do that for a living, you don't have any real friends.
No.
And if your family, if you have any family and they talk to you, you're generally very, very, very close to them because you have no one, because everyone is manipulative around you. They all want one thing from you. And if you weren't there and a different person were there, they would want it from that person. So you have no real intrinsic value. It's a silent message that happens inside of the world of dealing. It's it's a really bizarre kind of, but that's the other place that you see it. You'll see it in rehab facilities. You'll see it among incarcerated people and themselves, incarcerated people and guards.
Because nothing's real, nothing's honest. It's just what's happening right here at this moment. What do you have that I
Hmm.
want?
Hmm.
What do I have that you want? That's the
Hmm.
trade-off, but there's nothing
Everything is a
real.
means to an end. Yeah, everything is a means to an end. Yeah.
Yeah, I could totally
Katie
see
dinner.
then why family would
Hmm.
be such a thing. But that's what I mean. I try to be honest with everyone. I try to be honest with my dogs. I
Hmm.
tried to be honest with the people I worked with at that time in my life. I try to be honest with my family as best I can. I mean, yeah, there's always rules around that. But yeah,
I think the message is incomplete without it. And if the goal is to clearly, with our dogs, is to clearly communicate the behaviors we're looking for, the behaviors we're not looking for, it's kind of incomplete. Like playing a game of hot and cold, but you're not allowed to say cold. They're just kind of wandering around, hoping
yeah, I
that they
mean,
bump into the
has
right
to
thing.
be there has to be a degree of trust so the
Hmm.
dog understands that they're
1000%.
100% safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be where things are getting weird if
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yes.
saying or doing things that might suggest to the other that you actually might hurt them,
Mm-hmm.
or that you really were emotionally like gonna make them a homeless dog kind of thing. But that's a people problem. That's not a dog training problem. But as Jerri and I talk about this a lot, the lowest common denominator problem,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes across everything. And Crystal will talk about it too. We as trainers worry so much about what the 10% might do with our words that we're not honest with our words
Oh
because
man, I know.
we're
Ugh.
afraid of how our words will be interpreted by those who want to
Mm-hmm.
misunderstand
Hmm.
because they're looking for
Hmm.
reaffirming an agenda that you never intended. But boy, that has nothing to do with you. But as a result, that is why, especially on social media, we show the most inane, simple things, and we rarely get to the really interesting, complex.
Hmm.
I'm doing
Hmm.
that with this dog, but won't do it with that dog, and why? Which is frankly where we all, dog trainers, need to be focused, not on the 90%. We need to be understanding the 10% and telling most people, you can do this. 10% of dogs, you can't do this, but you don't always have to take the safest route.
Hmm.
Sometimes you should take the route that works really well for most dogs. You get a weird one, it's up to the dog trainer to start identifying the weird ones and helping. That's where our value is. But
Hmm.
it's odd that we are so safe with our advice. We're so safe with everything. Don't ever give your dog a rawhide. Don't ever walk your dog on a flexi. I mean, the list is
Ever, everything. It's
the less is
insane.
don't ever give your dog kibble. Don't ever give your dog raw. Don't ever give your dog things to
Meanwhile,
chew
my
on.
dog's drinking straight up dirty river water and pond water on camera, and people are like, doesn't that give him diarrhea? I'm like, yeah, it did at first. And then he just got used to it. And
Yeah,
they're like,
his
are you
system
going to
kind of
ride
like,
your horse through that? Yeah. And they're like, well, what if this happens or what if this happens? I'm like, I guess that's how he died then. I guess that's how I died then. Like, I just don't have that same sort of. Anyway, there's a point I want to make in there. I just think it's limiting to life to fear monger about everything. It's it's weird. I'm going to give you an example, and I love her dearly, and I don't think that she's going to watch this because she only watches Animal Planet. But my mother was a fear monger. My dad was fearless, no fear, no fear. My mom was the opposite, and I just don't care for that. It didn't go well with me as a child, and I could see the ways in which it's limiting to a life. Like, I've never seen my mom run before. I've never seen her physically run. I've seen her like do active things. It's not like she was a lazy person or whatever, but it just little things like that. Like, there's just always some reason why she wasn't going to do something, and she's kind of a city type of person. But I can see the difference in I didn't say any of those things to my daughter. And she has part of a genetic pool that, is different, but I just told her, you'll be fine a lot. It'll be fine. You'll be fine. It's fine. It's fine. Because number one, I didn't know because I was just dumb. You're in your 20s, you don't know, well, I guess I was in my late 20s, early 30s, but I see how it has helped her not put limitations on the things that um, she does. That the guy next door is like, man, I sometimes I watch your daughter over there and she's alone in the arena. And I was like, she's not alone. You guys are always here. And he kind of chuckled at me, like just the next door neighbor, because they are always there. I said, she's not alone. She's got you. But he said, well, I get it. But, and then began to tell me this story about he used to own that piece of property and he had horses. And then when he got out of horses, he wasn't going to do that anymore. He sold it to the owner that has it now, and that's where we board. He said, I got out here one day on my horse, and he begins telling this story that's pretty, he's going on a trail ride, whatever. And he said he got out there and the horse fell, and, there was an injury. And when he got to the part of the story where he said he cracked a beer open, I said, I'm going to stop you right there, sir. That would never happen. That would never happen. That would never be allowed. That would never be done. That's not something that happens in my family. The second thing is that other mistake you made would have never happened. So I see that you are concerned about her, and I actually really appreciate that. But to live the way that her and I live, you have to have guardrails, because when you're just doing this crazy stuff, you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself, and you have to know your animal. And if you don't know yourself and if you don't know your animal, you are not to do it. That's like a code that we live by. Hardcore code that we live by. If there is some reason that she thought a horse was going to buck, or a horse was going to, she would put a helmet on and stay in the arena. Like, I know that people watch and they think that but it's because the more you let yourself have these experiences, the more you realize who you are and who your animal is. And it gives you this sort of natural, those guardrails of like, the big book says it. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says we go into the world armed with facts about ourselves, and that's just all we're trying to do. So it takes an aspect of this
fear of things that may occur. Why would that occur? I wouldn't even be in that situation. That would not be allowed because that is inherently unsafe, or I can't control the variables, let's say. So then I would not do it. But fear mongering, I think it keeps you from even being able to get to a place where you can open yourself up to those experiences and start to understand stuff like that.
I have a question, Mattison. Do you think there were some people in jail that would prefer to stay there for the rest of their lives? Because, I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
food, medical care, a warm bed. I mean, like, are there some people that would trade autonomy and freedom for security and
So I'm going to answer this very honestly with both my experience and also my own kind of like people that I knew and also my own kind of experience. There was a phrase for it. They called it a petty felony, where certain individuals would commit these crimes cyclically every year in order to have somewhere safe and warm to be every winter. And they knew they would get sentenced to like 4 or 5 months. And so come fall, they would go and intentionally get arrested and hope that they got sentenced on a felony to prison time. So yeah, people absolutely do that. And I would be lying if I said that there weren't days that I confessed to Jerri that I I would give all of this responsibility and weight
The
up to go back to the
responsibility.
simplicity
Yeah.
of that,
Yeah.
of having, a, 3 hots in a cot and not really having to worry. And I'm such a creature of routine. That was a pretty routine place, and there were uniforms, and it just, yeah, there are days when the thought has crossed my mind of the it can feel like a burden, and that can feel freeing, which is wild. But also there was an experience, and there were times in there that like I've never felt so free, because I was like,
Mm.
really, really working on myself and working through things. So I think that it's a
Ooh,
very, very layered
ooh,
question.
deep thought.
Deep thought.
That's a deep thought. There are only so many places. There are only so many places like a person can go where you feel the freedom that she's talking about. I know what she's talking
with the
about.
It's kind
When
of,
you're in the
time.
I can never lose
deepest
it
part.
now. Can
Yeah.
never lose it now. Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
even to have the time to think, and I read something a while ago saying that people are often so busy with their lives that they literally don't
Mm,
have to just think about things. How do you
mm,
feel about this and the other? And there are days that, you're kind of going through the day with so many things on your list, multitasking, and you're running at such a high level that it's really easy to say, wow, I'd give a lot for a simpler time,
I read a lot
where you
of books,
ate,
and I
you
crocheted. I learned to
mm,
crochet. I learned to cook. I ran. I
mm.
Once I realized that at a certain point, I knew that I was going to be there. I accepted the gift and the opportunity to be really selfish and just be really selfish. And for the last like year, I was very intentionally just, this is probably the last time in my life, hopefully, that I'm going to be in a space like this where I don't have any responsibilities. I got no bills. I don't have to worry about anything. All I have to worry about is myself.
so that's
And I took advantage
really
of
interesting
that.
that in spite of, you just described it, the perfect life, right? No responsibility, you got your food covered, you got a place that you've really got all your basic needs, and yet
But you don't have
most people
safety.
don't want that.
You don't have
Most
I never had
Yeah.
safety. I never
did
felt
not.
safe, which meant I was in a state of hypervigilance for 5 years. And
Mm,
also the loss of agency, and living in a system that is designed to fail, designed for you to fail. And I mean that very, very specifically in terms of the rules and the institutional conduct reports at the prison facility that I was at. I was told at, it's called the White House, the building, excuse me, where the administration is, that the system is designed for inmates to receive one at least one institutional write-up per year. Mind you, those are things that will prevent you from early release, that will prevent you from a lot of things and can really hold you back. So it's really a system, it's living in a system that is designed for you to fail. And like that kind of goes back to my gripe with the way that I see a lot of people moving through the world with their dogs, of a system that is designed for these dogs to fail, designed for them to screw up. And because it's not meeting their needs. And I guess in the institution setting, like, a lot of my needs were being met, right? They let us outside, they gave us food, they had a health center, they had, various programs, they had there I even think about the degree to which outside of the pandemic we were outside, right? And we were actually able to do things. But there's this balance, because the micromanaging and the rules for no reason, the rules to just
Ooh,
have
that's what
power,
gets me.
that
That's what gets me.
mm,
I would
they're for
start wanting
no
to fight.
reason. And I think
Yeah.
being surrounded by an abusive power, be like feeling unsafe, like not like when those elements make it not the perfect life and make it so and it's the restrictions and the supervisions. And I
Yeah,
think that mhm,
on the surface, when you just talk about it, like, oh, I got my food and I got my, it's just like with dogs.
mhm.
Well, they have a backyard. Well, I have a big backyard. And it's like, I hear you, but that's not, that's just on the surface. It's,
But you don't have autonomy. You don't
yeah,
get to make
yeah.
decisions. I mean, if you think about young people, young, where their parents, yes or no, right? So everything is a case, and some parents are pretty rational, and some are pretty irrational, and some are pretty strict, and you get all those range, right? But it's exceptionally frustrating for a human to be in a system where they feel that they don't have a say, where they're not heard, like what you were talking about, illogical rules. I know somebody who is in prison now. It's somebody I'm fairly close to, and they have to complete a bunch of groups to be considered to get out.
Mm,
And they have been transferred to multiple facilities over a very long period of time now. And they can't complete the groups because they'll start the group and then the person leading the group quits. So the group just stops, right? Then they get
mm,
transferred to another facility where they have a different set of groups, right? So years and years have gone by now.
Yeah.
They have done what they were told in every facility they have tried. And just again, after like 13 months into an 18-month program, the group got canceled. So they're going to come up for parole. They're not going to get it because they haven't done these baselines. And as I'm listening to this conversation, my heart is racing. And I'm so
hmm
angry for this person because it's so wrong to subject a human being whose life is on the line
hmm
to irrational expectations that you don't make it possible for them to meet,
hmm
and they pay the price. You don't pay
hmm
the price. The person who runs that facility, who should be responsible for what programs are available, when they're available, there's no accountability for that person. It costs $250,000 a year to incarcerate someone in California. So the money just keeps rolling in. Yeah, no, it's extremely expensive. Can you imagine what you could do with that $250,000?
When
You could
I was
take,
in high school, it was $100,000 a year in the state of Texas.
well, it's gone up. So for that much money,
Wow.
you for $1 million, you could take 4 inmates that are nonviolent, put them in a home, have 24-hour a day supervision and all. But what really kills me when I'm listening to these stories of you can't get out due to rules, it's almost like some like Clockwork Orange type
Yeah,
weird,
yeah.
like where you're the crazy one, right?
hmm
Like, wait,
hmm
who's crazy here? Because
So also,
and you can't show that anger because then you get in trouble.
hmm
I
So
don't think that most people realize that the prison institutions in our country are privatized, and
No,
that
they don't know that.
these
They
are
don't
not,
know that. Yeah.
this is the states paying money to private companies that run and operate these
Yes.
institutions. It is a
We're
for-profit
highly
institution,
Yeah.
incentivized
highly
not
profitable. Oh,
Hmm.
to
yeah,
lose
and
Hmm.
there
anybody.
are a lot of
Oklahoma has
shady things
so
going
many
back and forth
privatized
between
private prisons.
judges and yep.
Hmm.
It's very
Yeah,
I
interesting.
and
actually don't think they're private in California. I
Oh, okay.
think they're
there
public.
are multiple stories, documentaries, accounts of this. If you guys are
It is
interested in learning more about
different state
that,
by state.
it is different state by state. There are states that have outlawed the privatization of prisons. The more red states, I'll just be honest, the more red states tend to allow the privatization of prisons. However, so that's not great, but the more blue states tend to have the most outrageously high amounts to house prisoners. So they both have these kind of downfalls within whatever type of structure they're trying to use. It's modern slavery, just to be clear for
Yeah, because
everyone. It's
they're
modern day
working.
slavery. You can
Everyone's
also
working
watch the
in many
documentary
cases
13th.
producing.
Um, the documentary 13th will explain like all of this in depth. Offsite income. Oh, I thought she was saying something
Yeah,
to us.
there are a lot of
Okay.
like lower security prisons that'll do that as well with ankle monitors,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're able
Yeah.
to like leave
Mm-hmm.
during the day and go and work. The second facility I was at was a lower security, and they had like the highway cleanup as an
Mm.
option. I think they had some others. I don't remember at this point, but I know that there was a whole slew of gals going out with monitors every day.
Yeah, where I was, people like to work.
Yeah,
They like to
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
get
want to do
work
it.
because it
that.
was.
I didn't
They
want to
like
do
to
it
go
because
to
it
school.
meant
It
you
was
had
a
to get stripped
privilege.
out twice a day.
Yeah, I mean
Mm-hmm.
it gave them things to do. They like to do laundry duty. Then because
Mm-hmm.
you start to realize that you actually do want to do things and be busy when you're
Yeah.
not. I actually
That's
have
how
this
I ended up with the dogs.
Yeah. Oh, that's
right.
good. You guys segued into this perfectly. I was just about to say for the last 15 minutes, let's talk about. But yeah, that's a perfect segue.
What do you want me to say? I feel like this is
Yeah, that's
something
how
that
you
I
ended
haven't
up with the
talked about.
dogs. Keep going. I
So
love that.
I want questions about the dog program. Like what do you want to know about the dog programs? Because
So
I
how
feel like
did
I
you end
didn't
up
talk about
there?
it before.
How did you even end up like how does a person go from I almost said a cuss word. Oh shite. I'm incarcerated. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna get in some of these programs. Oh my gosh, there's a dog program at my facility. Is that what
So
happens?
I wasn't going to do any programs. I was, when I first arrived, 230 pounds, heavily medicated, and sleeping 18 hours a day and content to, oh, and I did get assigned to a job. I showed up and they were like, we don't need you. We'll call you if we ever need you. I was like, great. I'm about to sleep and read for 5 years. And that was my plan. And it didn't last because I started seeing these dogs around and I was like, oh, and also was having some not great side effects from being heavily medicated
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
started sleepwalking and sleep eating and just all kind, I was on a top bunk. It was actually very dangerous.
The antipsychotics are a really fun group of drugs, aren't they?
Especially when you combine them.
Yeah, that's always the best.
But and this is interesting too. I think the institution very clearly preferred medicated inmates because
Yeah.
as soon as I got there, they jacked my doses up,
Hmm.
added more meds in. It was crazy. They called it the Thorazine shuffle, watching the inmates just
Oh
go and get
God.
their special meds at night because we had to go and have them administered and do a mouth check and yeah. So when I started feeling really like physically out of control and like I just had to change something. And so I saw these dogs. There were two different dog programs. One was the Greyhound program, and it was retired Greyhounds, and it was really integrated into the building where the lifers lived, and it was a very like slow pace. We're just teaching them how to be pets, helping them recover from trauma, in the Greyhound racing industry. And a lot of them kind of ended up living a lot of their lives there, which is great. They were very, very fulfilled. But the other program was really multifaceted. It had three different parts. It had the staff daycare, so staff could bring their dogs for a day of daycare, for grooming, for boarding. There was also a service dog piece, And then there was also a humane society piece. So it was just, it drew me right in. And I went and did a tour, and it was, I also, my monkey at the time was like, oh, you'll never make it over there.
I would have been like,
That was her first mistake. So, because she's like, oh, it's like boot camp over there. She wasn't wrong because we were hustling and working. Like you were in school walking dogs, whether you had a dog or not. It was so structured and intense in the
oh,
best way and gave me just like an actual kind of boot camp light but dog experience. And it was really obvious to me as soon as I got there that that was the new path for me. That like having a purpose and being
I want to
productive,
make a movie
that
out
was
of
it.
this. I want a made for
So
TV movie out of
then my new
this.
bunkie signed me up for a running group, 230-pound me. And it was like a couch to 5K. It was like a 10 weeks up to a 5K. And I remember almost quitting the first day. And it was run a minute, walk a minute. And 6 minutes in, your girl wanted to die. I could not breathe. But I stuck with it the whole 10 weeks. I did the 5K. I did another 5K. I did a half marathon. I did more 5Ks. I won a 5K. It just, it all snowballed from literally this like this one choice. It was a conscious choice of I can't do this anymore. I have to change, and like seeing the beacon of the dogs and then immediately being around the animals was like it was just a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer for me to be there.
Wow, most people will never experience dogs in that way or animals in that way,
They
where they were
literally saved my
like
life.
literally at the
Pulled me
lowest
out
part of
of
their life.
mhm.
And listen, guys, the rock bottom conversation, people are like, well, that's subjective. And I'm like, no, it's not. There are levels to this. There are levels. And most people, including myself, will never know what it's like to be in prison and not be able to walk out for 5 years. There is something in there that most of us never ever get to. So whatever it was in at that moment where she was like, "Oh my God, I found a thing that's going to help me." Most of us will also never know what it's like to feel like you found your hope in that place. It's like a experience and a feeling that Madison possesses very specifically. And I think we should have like reverence for people like that. It's the same as when I meet a mother that's lost a child. Like she knows something about life I don't know, and I hope to God I never do. And so I have a deep, deep respect for people like that. Madison, love you so much.
Jerri.
I've told her this before. I wasn't like trying to just drop a, but I mean that, because we live in a culture today where everyone thinks that their problem is the worst problem, and it's not. It's not. There are there are pains worse than what we know. Like, I see people straight up lose it over their neurodivergence. And I'm like, well, there's just worse things out there than that. And looking back on my life, I used to lose it a lot too. I didn't call it that. I don't know that I thought it was mental illness or burnout from different, whatever mental states that I'd been in. But really, mostly what it was I was just throwing a series of unreasonable tantrums because I hadn't experienced extreme pain yet. And then once I did, like once I almost, even after getting sober, even after all the stuff I experienced, once I almost lost Milo, all that stuff became nothing. Nothing. All that stuff I've been being kidnapped and held and assaulted repeatedly. That meant nothing compared to almost losing my baby. It was like a drop in a pond compared to the despair that I felt around almost losing my child. So there are actually levels to what we can experience as human beings. And not being able to make it to work on time, or our boyfriend breaking up with us. Those aren't, or a parent that was mean to us. Welcome to the club.
You know, I remember years ago having a client who got cancer, and she came out the other side and she just said, I'll tell you this though, all those petty, stupid things I worried about before that happened, she had some anxiety issues. And so she goes, that all just disappeared. Because,
Yeah.
like, you want to know something to be afraid about? Be afraid you're going to die
Yep.
young. And she's just, it was really interesting. And I still
Yeah.
remember that. And it was a long time. She goes, anxiety just literally disappeared after that. It's
Yeah.
like, if you want something to be
I've
afraid
said
about,
that
you
for
got it now.
years to people, that my anxiety just disappeared. I get nervous about things. I get a little, anticipatory about some things, which is normal. Um, but when you think, I'm not going to be here anymore, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it, I'm going to leave my children here. My parents are going to have to bury me. My mother is going to cry over my coffin. Oh my God. And you really believe that, or you think, I'm not getting out of here. I can't leave. The bars just slammed shut. And because of my own choices, this is where my life is. There's just something about that. Oof.
You
I just
saying that I'm
this is
gonna keep
this is
it.
what I wanted to get to in this conversation, is because of the trend that I see in us being carried away with really small trivial feelings, and watching the dog world and the industry sway to those types of temperaments. I'm not sure if I'm relaying myself correctly, but um there are
I know what you're
levels.
saying. I don't know if other people will understand, but it's kind of what we alluded to earlier about the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
That rather than speaking to the whole and allowing, you can be very respectful of the non-whole, but you don't have to cater. There's a difference. You just
Yeah.
accept that there are all sorts of billions of differences in people. It's fine. It's fine. This is,
Hmm.
but this is the 90%. So let's talk about, in the case of dogs, what's going to work for the 90%. And because it's so fascinating to look at the 10%, let the specialists learn about that 10% and then make good
Yeah.
choices for it. But the public discourse has become so narrow because we might not include 99%. And then you get the, oh my God, but what if somebody tries that? And like, I'll just tell you, it's
Hmm.
really on my mind right now because I had to teach my puppy to swim. My
Oh,
swimming pool is in the same area as my
yeah.
dog yard. And he really does not like shaping. He does not like choices. He wants to be told what to do. He's a border collie. He likes rules. He likes to be told what to
Hmm.
do, and he likes games. He likes contests. He does not like learning new things. And every time I have to teach him something new, I have to kind of really sit down and figure out, how am I going to do this so he doesn't know he's learning something new? Like, what can I tie it to that he already knows? I don't have anything to tie going in the swimming pool. And the reason is you have to get in that first step. I picked him up and put him in the pool. I
Mm.
took all agency away. I took all choice away, and I did it for him because I
Hmm.
knew that all of the other things I could have done, sitting there, cajoling, bribing, he would have just
Hmm.
worked himself up into a lather.
Oh,
I know that.
oh, yeah.
So I just got his toy, and I didn't toss him in. I just picked him up and placed him on the first step, held him there telling me he was amazing. And then I picked him up and took him out. And I do that several times. And within 5 minutes, he's leaping on the first step. Like, he's so excited, but he won't go to the second step. All right,
Mm.
fine. I waited a day. Next day, I picked him up. I put him on the second step. It was like, but you could see him being like, oh, thank you so much. Oh, I see how this works. I'm fine. I'm
Mhm.
safe. And then the final step was, there were no more steps. He was going to have to swim. So I gently took him by his collar and, sort of like a little boat, sort of launched him.
Yeah.
And he launched out, and then he swam out to the toy that was out there, and he came back. And my mental, because that's big, right? Because I put him in water. So then after he got out of the pool, I waited to see if he would come back around to where I was. Because if he avoided me at the steps, that would have been the information I need, right? That what I just did was upsetting and traumatizing.
Hmm.
Absolutely not. He came right back around to the step, and he had to be launched several times. But the fact that he came and sat in the water on the first step, because that's where he's comfortable, told me
Yeah.
he was good with that sort of assistance.
Hmm.
This conversation is something I really, I even have video, and I would love to show that video publicly, and I have decided not to because I know what
Because
will happen.
people are going to lose their minds if
They're
you
going
show
they're
that.
going to take the video out of context, take away the words, and show how I forced my puppy to go swimming. They'll ignore the
Yeah,
fact that as I forced him to do that, rather than scrabbling, clawing, trying to get back out, he's actually swimming out to the
he's
toy.
actually swimming.
There
It's the
won't be any of
same
that.
reason. It's the same reason that I don't show videos of me collecting small pebbles and putting them in my treat pouch and then throwing them at Enzo's butt when he takes too long. Hey, I'm gonna th- I'm gonna throw a pebble at you, and that I'm gonna throw a pebble at you, and me actually throwing it, and it's kind of fun to like hit the little meaty part. Has turned into
Doesn't
now when
hurt
I
hurt
say
him.
I'm gonna throw. I'm gonna throw. I mean, these are like little. I go. I'm gonna throw a pebble at you if you don't stop it, because he'll be just into a smell for a really long time, which is my the equivalent of like I say this all the time, a human friend that like won't stop looking at the blue velour pantsuit. Girl, we've seen it. We've been in here. You've put three different pairs of shoes underneath it. We're moving on, okay? But now that's turned into when I say, I'm gonna throw a rock at your butt. He always goes and stops because he's getting ready for it. If I showed the internet, and it's hilarious, and I'm always like, and then he always picks up his little, and we run off together. But if I showed that, it would be
Well,
demonized as,
the thing is,
so you
90% of the
want to
human
throw rocks at
I know,
dogs?
but
What?
90% of people will see it, take it in
Yeah.
context, look at the whole
Yeah.
picture, read the words. Like, if you
Hmm.
did something like, he's the only dog I've ever done that with. And I've taught a lot of dogs to swim, but he's not like the others, right?
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
and it took me a year to teach Burrito to swim. Burrito is not this dog. And it was Burrito literally had to come over, turn sideways, and ask me to pick him up so I could, because he can't get into the pool. So I could help him. But
Oh,
you work with the individual you have, and it I don't know, people would say that's an aversive. Well, no, because he came back for more, so it's not an aversive.
yeah. It's
But it
just
is force,
aversive to you in your feelings.
right? Because it is force. And there are some dogs that if
Yeah.
you did that would literally panic straight up, and if he had done that I would have pulled him right back out of the water and we wouldn't have done that again. But it's just, this is what it
Yeah.
bugs me, and this is why I talk about that lowest common denominator. That video would have value for people to see it,
Hmm.
because most people could look at that and listen to the words and why I made those
Hmm.
choices and the structure and evaluate if it might be an option for them. And then there's that 10%, and I'm supposed to worry endlessly about the 10%. Now, in this, I don't usually worry about the 10%, but I also am careful about video because I have seen some stuff I put out done terrible things. I mean, just really terrible things to me with snippets of videos.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
really slowing it down and trying to make it look like something happened that did not actually happen. But it wouldn't be hard to slow it down, narrow in on the fact that I reached
Hmm.
out, took I take rough more than collar. I sort of take a rough collar combination. I do that with all my dogs for all sorts of things, and sort of lifting it in. But you could take a video of just the tiniest piece and ignore all the rest. And that's a sad reality, that there are people who will
Yeah.
do that. And I'm just not feeling it right now. So I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
I have absolutely had my content taken, and oh my God, I will never forget that. And that's what people are afraid of. People are just so afraid that their stuff's going to be taken out of context and blasted everywhere, and they're going to be embarrassed and humiliated. And it's unfortunate that that's where we are, but hopefully, talking about some of this stuff and talking about what we want to show will help. Did you ever think, Madison, did you ever think that you'd be like on the internet talking about that
Absolutely
you'd be
not.
like, wait, just listen, that you'd be like, I'm gonna get out of prison and then one day I'm just gonna be on a live with Denise Finzi.
she wouldn't have known who I was because I'm a dog person. Big
No,
fish,
but it's like if
small
you
pond.
look above from the bigger, like the bigger perspective, you would be able to see Denise down there and you would know who Denise is. So it's just funny to me. It's funny. And I'm glad that you're so open to um having conversations with people that are outside of the group. the academic group, Denise, if you will, because I feel like you're kind of the only one that will
there
do
aren't
that,
two. You know, I
that will
think
do
the
it on a
difference.
regular basis,
I
openly.
I think I'm actually at the point where I'm truly immune, which is
I
amazing. Like,
same.
because I have been through things, guys. I have been through it. And now I'm just
I
like,
and we appreciate your service in
I,
paving the way and making it easier for
well, and
us.
you know what's interesting is people don't even bother me anymore because I
Yeah,
think they're like, she just doesn't care anymore. She doesn't
you
respond.
can't.
But
Hmm.
I'm also not
That's when
necessarily
you
going to
get
give
to
the
the
fodder.
final boss level.
I'm
When
not
you don't
necessarily going
even
to give.
respond.
Okay, did I ever tell you about the time I have this video? It's so funny of Zen at the vet. I bought him a hood and I gave him medicine and I muzzled him. It's not a choice, right? The hood is for him
Yeah.
because if he doesn't see the vet coming in, and I held him, and then it was over. If I showed this video, it was, in my opinion, a very successful vet visit for this kind of a dog. Somebody wrote something up saying, "Can you imagine taking your dog to the vet, drugging him, covering his eyes?" And I didn't even know they're talking about me. And like, and holding him there. And I'm like,
You're
oh,
like,
that's so
wow, that's
terrible.
crazy.
Wait.
I
And then,
know what video that was
yes, it's
because I
it's such a,
commented on it. I'm just gonna say as a side note, if I was a veterinary technician and I walked into a room and Denise Fenzi was standing there holding her dog, I would start crying. It was the same video. Wow, two very different interpretations.
well, and and then she's like, beware of your idols. What the hell does that mean? Like, it was to a force-free group. She didn't name me. She did not name
Beware
me.
of
And then
your
all the comments,
idols.
beware of your idols. But she didn't name me. But then all the comments, they were so funny because they're people I know who I know me, fine with me. Like, we get along. They probably were people who had seen the video and had no idea
Yeah,
because of the way she framed it that
yeah,
this was the same thing. But that kind of stuff, like, I don't get upset about it anymore. Now I'm just kind of like, wow,
that
how
happens.
sad.
Yeah,
But what I don't like is to provide fuel for people to behave
fodder.
badly. And it's
Yeah,
not about me anymore. I was whatever. But I don't like it because it's bad for the industry as a whole.
yeah.
And people who follow me, they literally get hurt. They're just like, I hate to see
Hmm.
you mistreated. And I'm like, whatever.
You're
At
like,
this point,
meh.
don't even tell me about it. I don't want to know about it. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm fine.
But I don't like to
I'm
see it in
fine.
the industry. And whenever I see people behaving badly in the industry, I feel sadness for not the behavior, but for the industry as a whole, that we have these unbelievably petty divisions. And we're talking about people who are kind of on the same side. I'm not talking about the dog daddy and me. I'm
Right.
talking about
It's people that would
people
seemingly be in the same
that
general group.
they probably are okay with my training, and I'm probably okay with their training. I mean, they'll find things and then they'll say weird things, but it's just like, why would you go looking for division? And
Somebody called me disgusting the other day online because the hunting dogs were in kennels and they live in those kennels. They said, "You're disgusting."
ooh,
Did they spell it right though?
No,
No.
it was disgusting.
Disgusting.
And then it started this whole thing. It was on YouTube. And I thought, you know, we're in a real weird place as human beings when we can look at our overweight dog on the couch that hasn't left our home or yard in 3 years, but that we believe has ultimate freedom because they have free room to do whatever they want, eat holes through our doors because we don't want to use a crate, kind of thing. That we would ever look at someone that had hunting, like working hunting dogs, and be like, "You're disgusting." I, what? I just, what are we, what Twilight Zone is this?
See, I just put the same rules. How much time does the dog get to do interesting stuff? Like, it doesn't actually
Yeah,
matter where the dog
that's a
spends
great,
their
yeah.
downtime. When a dog is out, like a working dog, a real working dog, a farm dog or something, those dogs are out for hours working.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably happy when they get back to their
It's
kennel to
so
sleep.
many hours, and the hills are so steep, and they just keep running and running,
25
and
miles a day. Like, that's a
it's
pretty good
so
life,
terrible.
which is really
It's
different than a person who puts the dog in a kennel and then once or twice
right.
a week and then the dog gets older and retires and literally spends months
And
or
spends,
years.
yeah,
That makes me
very, very different.
incredibly sad. And that's when I
Mm-hmm.
wish, why don't you just rehome the dog? Like, if it can't do what you
Yeah,
want to, it's time to
you can
find it a
just,
retirement home.
yeah, people do that with horses all the time.
Well,
You find it a place where it can be useful and have
in
purpose.
some
Everyone needs
circles,
purpose.
dog people will do that, but in other circles,
Mm,
it's like hardcore, like you
yeah,
can't do that. And I think that's sad because I think it's the right answer.
yeah.
If you can't bring it into the house and just make it into some kind of a pet,
Mm-hmm.
then find somebody who can take good care of it for you. Because I don't have any problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Dog is happy. But true
I
working dogs,
agree.
I think they have an amazing life.
Yeah, I do too. I've watched and I've seen it, and they seem to. All right, ladies, don't forget tonight's the night. It's Wednesday, so the Dogs Anonymous meeting.
So
It is
awesome.
in almost an hour. You can find a link to the meeting on the Instagram and stories. You can find it on the website. But please, everyone's welcome. You don't have to share. You can just come and be virtually present. You don't even have to have your camera on if you don't want to, but come and see what it's all about. And Mattison, thank you for coming
Thanks for
and
having me.
giving some first person knowledge there, because a lot of people think things and they really don't know what they're talking about because they haven't been there. So we have to share it.
And then we all learn a little bit more.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
well, I
All right,
appreciate
let's
it.
smile for our picture. All right, everybody. Have a good night.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.